large creature came out of her lair, flowing like water out of her lair, and rose from the water to look at me. I saw her silvery eye swivel in its socket and seek my face. She looked into my eyes, and the next thing I knew, her arms were boiling up out of the water with those beautiful white questing suckers first.
Sy Montgomery has been studied, probed, and touched by strange, intelligent alien creatures, all without traveling to distant galaxies. She found these creatures on our planet, dolphins and octopuses. Sy is a curious person. She has written books about pink dolphins, octopuses, sharks, gorillas, elephants, tigers, snow leopards, cheetahs, eagles, hawks, tree kangaroos, turtles, pigs, hummingbirds, and much, much more. Her curiosity has taken her to experience wildlife in Africa, India, Brazil, Papua New Guinea, Mongolia, and Namibia. But of all this, some of her strangest, almost otherworldly experiences have been with her friends from the sea, the octopuses. So, what has Sy Montgomery experienced being touched and probed by octopuses? And how has this affected her sense of herself, of human beings, of life? Has it changed her consciousness? Is she different now? Sy, thank you for being here. I want to start right in. I want to start with a question about curiosity. The question is, what makes you think that octopuses are curious, and what do you think they want to know?
Well, I'll describe for you the first time I met an octopus, and from their behavior, you can draw your own conclusion. My first giant Pacific octopus who I got to know was an individual named Athena. And I went to the New England Aquarium and asked if I could go behind the scenes and if the curator of that gallery would open the lid and let me meet her. You got to have a lid on the octopus tank or the octopus will come out and all kinds of bad things will happen. So I climbed up a little stairway, and my now dear friend Scott lifted the lid, and immediately this large, at least her arm span would have been at least 8 feet, large creature came out of her lair, flowing like water out of her lair, and rose from the water to look at me. I saw her silvery eye swivel in its socket and seek my face. She looked into my eyes, and the next thing I knew, her arms were boiling up out of the water with those beautiful white questing suckers first. So I asked Scott, may I touch her? It was clear she wanted to know what I was, and I wanted to know what she was. So I plunged my hands and arms into the water, and immediately she started covering me with her soft questing suckers. And the thing about octopus skin is they can taste with every inch of their skin. But this is most exquisitely developed in the suckers, of which on the giant Pacific, there are 200 on each arm. And each sucker is capable of a pincer grip. So they can conform the sucker to almost any surface. And it is now known that they actually can taste the biome of various creatures. They can probably taste beneath our skin and taste our blood too. So here's this creature who is very distantly related to humans. The last time we shared a common ancestor, everyone was a tube 500 million years ago, who is looking into my face, who has chosen to leave its lair, who again has chosen to take its arms and suckers and lift them out of the water at considerable effort to see what the heck I was. I was certainly not the first human that she met, but it is now known that octopuses can recognize individual humans. This has been tested. So I was a new human to her. And we spent quite some time kind of exploring each other. So immediately it was clear to me that she was just as curious about me as I was about her. Had she been frightened, she would have never left her lair. If she had come out of the lair, saw something horrible, she would have gone back in. But no, she wanted to investigate me. And she ended up knowing a great deal about me. Very few people begin tasting and touching you that early in a relationship. But she was, and she was learning a great deal about me.
Sy, in your book about octopuses, you talk about the type of consciousness of octopuses. And in the final chapter of your book, the chapter is called Consciousness. As you say, renowned scientists signed a document called the Cambridge Declaration of Consciousness that creatures other than human beings have consciousness. These creatures are not machines programmed by biology. They are awake, they think, they feel, they sense. But what about curiosity? Is curiosity in itself a type of consciousness?
Well, I think curiosity is recognized as an attribute of what humans consider higher minds being those minds like our own. And I could go on for a while about the value of exploring minds that are unlike our own. Yet, understandably, I think scientists start by investigating those minds that are like ours, the animals that we recognize their intelligence, like chimpanzees. You can get a blood transfusion from a chimp. Like dolphins, we know that dolphins are very intelligent, or that their intelligence is like our own. But curiosity serves a valuable adaptive um, advantage, because if you're curious, you're going to explore your environment and have a better idea of what's going on in the neighborhood. You will have a better idea of where the food is. You'll have a better idea of where the best hiding places are. You'll have a better idea of how to disperse from your parents, for example. So curiosity has adaptive value. And I expect it is far more widespread in our universe than a lot of people recognize or relate to.
Sai, you talk about curiosity in octopuses and curiosity in human beings. It sounds as though we think that curiosity is similar in two very different types of creatures, humans and octopuses. But maybe curiosity also varies between them. So, how is curiosity both the same and different between octopuses and human beings, and maybe dolphins too, because you've also written about dolphins?
Right. Well, we talk about an animal's umwelt, its living world. So the things that an octopus might be interested in may not be the same things that we are interested in. Otherwise, the octopus would constantly be trying to leave the water, for example. And they do come out of the water. They come out of the water to explore, not because they don't like the water, but because their curiosity leads them to other places. And sometimes, you've heard that saying, curiosity killed the cat. Curiosity does expose you to risk often, but the risks are often worth it because you're finding out more about your the world around you. Um, I think for an octopus, one of the first questions they might want answered is, "Can I eat you?" And humans are that way too. I mean, goodness sakes, early humans, who came up with the idea of eating oysters? Who would do such a thing? What about lobsters? It looks like a great big old bug, although folks do eat a lot of bugs. So I think for an octopus, they are a short-lived species. You may know that giant Pacific octopuses only live 3 to 5 years. So their curiosity from the point that they hatch is quite intense. They have to learn everything that they need to survive. They are not being taught it by their parents. They hatch out of tiny eggs the size of a grain of rice. The father's long gone. He has nothing to do with caring for the eggs. The mother may care for the eggs until they hatch, but then shortly after that, she dies. So curiosity is a really important tool for an octopus. And I think their curiosity is even more intense in their short lives than ours is.
Sy, you mentioned distinct individual octopuses by name and you give their stories separately. Athena, Octavia, Callie, Genevieve, Karma, and so on. You individualize an octopus like Octavia so well that it would only be the most heartless of readers who wouldn't feel the sense of loss in her death in the final pages of your book. Is it important for you to individualize and particular it's important for you to individualize, and I'm going to say that again because I've stumbled over that, okay? That's what editing is all about. Okay. Sy, you mentioned distinct individual octopuses by name and give their stories separately. Athena, Octavia, Callie, Genevieve, Karma, and so on. You individualize an octopus like Octavia so well that would it be only the most heartless of readers who wouldn't feel the sense of loss in her death in the final few pages of your book. It is important for you to individualize and particularize octopuses. Why? Is this a way of relating to life for you?
Yes, and now scientists recognize that is job one if you are doing ethology, the study of behavior of animals. Each individual is different distinctly. We know this from genes, for example, but it's super important to know who's doing what, particularly if you're studying a whole population of animals. And this is a big sea change in the study of animals. When Jane Goodall went into the field in 1960 to study chimpanzees, she almost, well, at first she spent months and months getting them used to her, and it was raining and it was very difficult. But very quickly, really, she discovered chimpanzees use tools. And when she wrote up her findings, and this was the first non human anything found to use tools. Now we know that even fish and insects use them. But do you know no one wanted to publish her paper? And why? Because she named the individuals instead of numbered them. People felt like every animal just represented what that animal did. Of course, humans are totally different, right? You need to know each individual human if you were doing a study of humans, because every human can have a profound effect on his or her community or nation or the world. Well, Jane Goodall found that this was the case with chimpanzees too, and so it is throughout the animal kingdom. Sometimes animals are so distinct that it's very easy for us to recognize it from their behavior, from their appearance, and often these individual traits can be traced to their families or their upbringing, just as is the case with humans. This was certainly found to be so with Jane Goodall's chimpanzees. But with octopuses, anyone who's ever worked in an aquarium and gotten to know the octopuses, all the octopuses are always named, even if the public doesn't know it. The keepers know that each one is highly individual. Bill Murphy, who was the keeper the whole time I was studying the octopuses for my book, he could tell you amazing stories about how different each one was. One of them, named Truman, was just a really laid back octopus. Genevieve bit him one time. Did not envenomate, because you can choose not to envenomate, but he did get bitten by her. Kali, oh, she was a young octopus and she was wonderful. But she did bite one of my friends while my hands too were in the tank. And I think she bit not because she was upset with that person, but because that person had gone on new medicines and probably she didn't taste right to her. There's some bold octopuses and some shy octopuses. At the Seattle Aquarium, they named one octopus Lucretia McEvil because she dismantled the tank all the time. Another one was so friendly, overly friendly. There'd be one arm on you, then two arms, and three. You'd peel one off, and then four arms would be on you. They called him Leisure Suit Larry.
Sy, you write that octopuses show curiosity with their eyes by coming closer to something to watch, by showing individual preferences in what they want to watch or don't watch. You also suggest that octopuses take actions to test a reaction. Towards the end of your book, you are underwater with a with an octopus who has been injured by a predator but doesn't flee from you. Why do you think that octopuses, including wild octopuses, were curious about you? Were they searching for information to manipulate you for their benefit, perhaps to get food? That would be a very functional curiosity. Or do you think they were curious about you for another reason, perhaps as part of a bonding process? Why were they curious about you? How did it affect you that octopuses were curious about you?
Well, first, it's an enormous compliment. I mean, really, paying attention is the highest compliment you can get when someone's paying attention to you. So I loved it that my octopus friends were apparently just as interested in me as I was interested in them. Some of the wild octopuses I met were extremely shy, but the one that you're talking about, even though one of her arms had been bitten off by a predator, she was so bold and so curious that that did not deter her. I wondered while I was writing that first book, Secrets of, it was the first book I wrote about octopuses, by far not my first book, but the first one about octopuses. I did wonder, like, why are they bothering with me at all? Because it was thought that octopuses were famously solitary. And as you probably know, there are hundreds of species of octopuses, and we've only just begun to explore how they live. But after Soul of an Octopus came out in 2015, I was subsequently asked by National Geographic to research and write another book called Secrets of the Octopus. And by then, we were in what I call the golden age of octopus research. And it has since been discovered that there's quite a few species of octopuses that form partnerships with other species to hunt. And why would you do that? Well, it turns out that in some species, there's a fish who will come and get his octopus friend, do a special signal to tell the octopus, hey, I know where there's some prey, but I can't get to it because I have a bony skeleton. You don't. So why don't you come and you can get something delicious and it'll flush out all kinds of other things from this coral crevice and I can have it too. And the octopus will follow that fish to the location. The fish will do a headstand saying, oh, here it is, here it is. And then the octopus puts its gelatinous arms into these little crevices and everyone has a feast. So octopuses are capable in the wild of forming alliances with other creatures. And how did they discover that? Curiosity led them to it. I do not think that they were necessarily all born with an affiliation for seeking out, human beings, for example, or necessarily seeking out fish. But if you're curious about your surroundings, it can lead you to notice that certain individuals may have knowledge that you do not. That, of course, requires theory of mind, which for ages many scientists and philosophers believed only humans had.
Theory of mind is consciousness that another creature is a separate, autonomous creature, has thinking of its own, and also can be deceived. Okay? So, for octopuses to have theory of mind is a much higher level of thinking and consciousness. So when you talk about alliances, forming alliances, and some kind of bonding, in octopuses, is it purely functional, purely transactional, or are octopuses going beyond what needs to be functional, particularly in alliances with human beings?
Well, it depends on what you call functional. I mean, why did you pick your best friend? Probably because you enjoy doing similar things. Well, I think one of the reasons that Octavia and Kali and Karma and Athena enjoyed my company and chose to come out of their lair whenever I was there is that we would play together. And play is also one of those expressions of what is thought of as higher consciousness. We enjoyed the same kind of thing. And all these octopuses would have been fed just as much and just as often if I wasn't the one offering them food. But it gets boring in your tank if nothing's going on. And it's pretty cool if there's somebody that you can explore, somebody who's going to give you a toy. The other thing that octopuses like, many of them enjoy gentle touch. And they're quite distinctive in this. Some don't like it if you touch their head. Some don't like it if you touch their mantle. Some really enjoy if you run your finger down. They'll have two rows of suckers between those two rows. Some really enjoy what that feels like. Others don't. Others don't like to be touched at all. Some don't want to interact with people. I have not met an octopus at New England Aquarium that wanted absolutely nothing to do with me ever. But, that is possible as well. But I think what curiosity does for everyone who possesses it is it widens your view of what is possible in this world. It tells you where the food is and where the predators are, but it also can lead you to things that are just plain fun. And I am convinced that the octopuses that I knew just enjoyed having a fun time doing something new and interesting.
So when you use words like play, fun, enjoy, that doesn't sound like purely transactional. That is, you're manipulating another creature to get something out of the person. You're enjoying the person just to have that pleasure of enjoying that person. You know, play in particular is a kind of imagination. It's and and I've observed it in myself in orangutans up close that they will play together. They will be playmates. They will enter the same play world. They will enter the same world of imagination. So it sounds like me that you are agreeing that octopuses go beyond a functional relationship where they're merely looking to get something out of you. They want a bond. They want pleasure and enjoyment.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that you could also reduce all of your relationships with everyone you love to a transaction if you wanted to. It's like, what do I want out of you? Well, I want to have a fun game of tennis, and that's why I like you and not the person down the street who's in the wheelchair because he can't play tennis with me. Um, why do why did you marry the person that you married? Well, because you shared things in common, you enjoyed their company. Still, you're getting something. And the reason that I bring this up at all is just that you can see an evolutionary value to things like play and fun and love.
Yes, exactly. And I think you've just given some excellent marital advice.
Well, I'm a great husband.
So, Sai, there's a distinction between being curious and between sending a message of exactly what somebody wants from another person. People and apes signal their interest by staring intently, by eye movement, and scientists know that apes read and interpret the message in staring. Human beings um, show curiosity by asking questions. But octopuses don't have language, but they do change color dramatically. You say in the final chapter of your octopus book that a wild octopus in the sea seems curious, that she seems to be asking you questions. Who are you? So, if octopuses are curious but can't ask questions with words, can they still ask questions another way, or is that impossible? Are there ways for octopuses to ask a question without language?
Absolutely. And we do this all the time with laboratory animals when we're probing their cognition. I mean, you can ask a rat all day long, do you remember that maze? How is it? Do you dream? We have to find ways to ask questions that they answer with their behavior. So I think absolutely that other animals frequently ask questions and answer them without using words.
And you've already mentioned theory of mind in octopuses, which means that they would be aware that another creature is thinking and thinking differently and can be deceived. So that connects with what you just said about maybe theory of mind, even allowing this kind of communication without language.
Well, if you want to talk about deceit, who is the master of deceit? An octopus. Because an octopus is always going, oh, no octopus here. I'm just a piece of coral. Oh, wait, no, I'm a passing cloud. Wait, there's some who actually adopt the posture of poisonous fish or poisonous sea snakes. They are constantly trying to deceive their predators and their prey. And in order to do that successfully, which they have done for a lot longer than we've ever been on Earth, they have to understand that the predator or the prey item may have a whole different view of the world and a whole different set of beliefs than they do.
And what you're saying is theory of mind, there's awareness of difference. There's awareness of difference in a human being. There's awareness and a difference that Sy Montgomery thinks differently from other humans.
Yeah, I'm sure. They do definitely recognize individual humans, and they recognize them probably in multiple ways. We know that they recognize us simply from looking up through the water at our faces. And we know this from experiments that were done at Seattle Aquarium with identically dressed human volunteers. Some volunteers always gave the octopuses a delicious fish, and other volunteers dressed identically would always touch the octopuses with a bristly stick, which they don't like. So even if they left their fish at home or didn't bring their nasty stick, the octopuses would come towards those who had given them something they enjoyed. And when they would see the person who had touched them with the bristly stick, not only would they not approach that animal, that human, but sometimes they'd squirt that person in the face with freezing cold salt water. And they would often make an eye bar, which is a way of making, they would change color in such a way that their eyes look bigger, which means I'm a bigger animal than you think. You better not bother me. So we do know sometimes what they're thinking. They are showing us what they are thinking at times. Other times they are hiding not only what they're thinking, but who they are by changing the colors on their body, the texture of their skin, and the shape of their body.
Sy, as you know, neurons are tiny cells in the nervous system that transmit information and are involved in reasoning and intelligence. Human beings have most of their neurons in their brains, but octopuses are unusual for the concentration of neurons in their tentacles, which they use to interact in more complex ways than human beings use their arms and legs. That sounds like intelligent tentacles. So, what if people were like octopuses and had fewer neuron sensors in their brains and more neurons and sensors in their arms and legs? What differences would that make in human beings?
Boy, well, Ogden Nash kind of gave us his feelings on that in a little poem that said, let's see, you know what? I actually have it and I can read it off the wall. Do you want to hold on for a minute and this is worth it. The little poem by Ogden Nash goes, tell me, O octopus, I begs, is those thing arms or is they legs? I wonder at thee, octopus. If I were thou, I'd call me us. So it's possible that octopus have multiple selves. In fact, some research indicates that octopuses have some bold arms and some shy arms. If an octopus's arm is severed by a predator or an evil researcher, happily that arm will grow back. But meanwhile, it can go off and do stuff. It can go off and hunt prey. Now, it can't live for a very long time because Octopus's 3 hearts are nowhere near the severed arm by now. And it has no way to oxygenate its blood, and all the organs of digestion and everything's gone. But for a while, that arm can go forth as a separate individual and experience the world. If we could call it affection, if it felt like to her, if affection felt the same to her as it did to me. But I do know that she chose my company. And at the end of her life, she not only remembered me, but she made a huge effort when she was sick and old and dying. She made a huge effort to come from the bottom of her tank up to the surface to greet me, to look into my face, and to touch and to taste me for one last time.